are here today to talk about the Angle Dynasty League 2024 Rookie Draft. So this is the inaugural Dynasty League that we started within our server of Angle Fantasy Basketball on Discord. Hey, how's it going, guys? Andrew here from Angle. So before we get into talking about the draft picks made in our Dynasty League, which is a 30-team real salary league, I wanted to introduce our other two analysts at Angle here. First of all, Mitchell, fresh off a trip to Thailand. How are you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, relaxed, and ready to get back into basketball. As you can see, I have a Muay Thai shirt that I got from the first Muay Thai stadium in Bangkok. So, Andrew, you would have enjoyed it a lot. There were some like 15-year-olds fighting for pennies. It was intense, and it was a bunch of fun. But yeah, now that I'm back, I'm ready to pivot over back to basketball.
Very good, very good. Glad you enjoyed your trip, and that is a pretty awesome shirt. Braxton, how are you doing today, dude?
Excellent. Per usual, Andrew. I'm excited to talk about basketball as always with you.
All right, very good. So the Angle Dynasty Basketball League is very special to us because it is the only league that we commission within our server at this moment in time. It is probably going to be a while before we add even a second league. So instead of you being, a number within a lot of dynasty leagues that we have one dynasty league and we absolutely spoil the members within that with as much content and just attention that we can bring to it as possible. But this could also serve as an example to you if you are looking to get into a 30-team dynasty league or just a deep league dynasty, and you want to see what a good-looking league should look like, rules that you could be following, what your rookie draft should look like, or what you should look for in a dynasty rookie draft. Then today's video is going to be pretty helpful for you. So let's get into it. Okay, so here we are. We are going to go through each pick of the inaugural rookie draft from our Dynasty League. So there was only 52 picks made. And the reason why is because in the startup draft, you picked basically a rookie slot, which represented your pick in the rookie draft that was going to happen after the league startup draft. So during that startup draft, only 52 rookie picks were selected. So that's all we're going to be covering today. But this should be pretty deep coverage for pretty much any size of Dynasty League. So to get us started off, I wanted to go over a couple of disclaimers. Number one, the team name for the league or the team name theme is any professional basketball club, male or female. So that's the reason why you see some crazy team names as well as some cool looking logos on here because people got pretty creative with what they wanted to do. So on here, you'll see the team that drafted them. You'll see the player, the actual NBA team they belong to, a 9-category stat set display on the right side where we highlight some of their strengths and weaknesses and what we believe the peak of their 9-category game to look like. On the left-hand side, you'll see the pick selection that this person was made at in the Dynasty League. And then on the right side of it is where we at Angle personally ranked these rookies in our own rookie dynasty ranking. So you'll see as we go down here, some people were picked spot on. Some people were picked a little bit early and it ended up paying off. And some people got some pretty great value throughout this draft too. The other disclaimer, this draft happened on June 30th. We got this league started up and going right away. So it happened right after the actual NBA rookie draft. So there was a couple of major injuries that were not known about yet. Mainly the one to Devin Carter and Duran Holmes. So just wanted to give that as a disclaimer before we get started here. So number one, this team, the Magnolia Chicken Temblados Hot Shots, the craziest team name that we probably have, or at least the longest one. They took Reed Shepherd first, but they also own pick 2 and took Alex Sarr. So Mitchell, going over to you after a long amount of debate. This debate carried well before Summer League even happened, debating having Reed Shepherd number 1 over Alex Sarr. And recently we did make that move to put Reed up there. So tell us, since you were a big advocate for doing that, especially too, how you feeling about Reed at 1 and maybe what would happen if pick number 1 and 2 were actually made by separate teams in this league?
Yeah, so going back to your disclaimer, this draft was pretty much completed before the start of Summer League. And a lot of the hype with Reed Shepherd happened right after, or I guess during, the first game of Summer League where Reed Shepherd really just popped off. So looking back, it would have been interesting to see if the first two picks were split up by two separate teams, because at the time, even looking at, prior ADP data that Matt Lawson published within the last, I think, 40 drafts people submitted, Alex Sarr seemed to be the consensus number one pick, and even for us too, before Summer League. So it is interesting, but I think Magnolia Hotshots got it right. I mean, even considering he had both picks with selecting Reed Shepherd one, I do want to say though that he did take these rookie picks one and two very early in our startup draft. I believe back to back. Pick one was around the top 30, and then pick two of the rookie draft was a top 35 asset for him.
That's very true. Good point. Good point there. So next brings us to pick number 3, which was Donovan Clingan. Next one is pick 4, which was Ron Holland. So one thing I will say about Ron Holland when I saw him in person is, Mitch, you and I saw him back in November, and he honestly looked pretty much the exact same as when we saw him. And so, from November to July, it's a pretty good amount of time. So I would have liked to have seen a little bit more development in what Ron's capable of. But I will say in that Summer League performance, he looked very similar when we saw him on the G League Ignite all the way back in November. Okay, so bringing us down, pick 5, Zach Edey. So, Mitch, one thing I wanted to ask you actually really quickly. Last podcast, Braxton and I had an agreement on a statement he made where he thinks year one, so not career length, but year one, the most impactful rookie, 9 category wise, is going to be Zach Edey. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I would think that he's slotted into that starting center spot pretty easily. And I could see him project to get like 12 points, 8 rebounds, and like 1.5 blocks a game. Another honorable mention is Dalton Connect. I know the Lakers like to kind of lean towards some, older rookies that are ready to produce. And I think because the Lakers didn't really add anybody in free agency of note, Dalton Connect should have a pretty good shot to be that 6-man role for the Los Angeles Lakers. So Zach Edey for sure is my favorite to win Rookie of the Year, given his more maturity of his game and for that certainty of his role with the Grizzlies.
Yeah, and Braxton, your the predicted stat set that you gave him on the last pod was pretty much the exact spot on to the one Mitch did too.
Yeah, I really love Edie. And something I think is important to note here, at least for the column with our rankings, I think our rankings were about a full 3 or 4 weeks after this draft was made. So we are looking at it a little bit with hindsight. But in terms of Edie specifically, I personally would have taken him as high as, maybe 3 or even 4. I think he's going to going to have rock solid production. You guys know me. I love production now as opposed to, I'm more of a floor guy than a ceiling guy, I guess I should say. And big fan of what he's going to do over the next couple of years. I'd rather take that production now than hope for similar production a few years down the line from somebody else.
Great point. All right, so pick 6, which was spot on with our rank, was Stephon Castle. The Lakers in our league got some good value with pick 7. They got Rob Dillingham, which is who we have ranked at 4. Mitchell, you landed Modest Buzelis at pick 8, and we now moved him into the top 3. So tell us a little bit how you're feeling about Modest.
He's definitely one of the early risers post Summer League. Modest is an unstoppable force in the fast break. He's someone who can play through contact. He's an aggressive finisher. But he didn't really answer our questions in terms of an outside shot and playing within a half court offense. I was a little bit disappointed in his playmaking, but I want to say that, he didn't have the best teammates available to him. So he's kind of playing with the chip on his shoulder. But that's something that you want with a rookie, someone who's going to be aggressive. And you kind of juxtapose that with Patrick Williams, who is very shy with asserting himself, within an offense. You have a lot of belief that Modest can probably take that starting 4 role by the end of the season next year. And even with Zach LaVine potentially on the way, before the trade deadline, he can easily be inserted into the starting lineup by the end of the year, no matter the average. So Matas is an early riser for us. He averaged almost 4 stocks a game, 5 stocks a game, which is something that we love in category leagues. So if he ever cleans up that efficiency and 3 point shot, he has like a top 50 ceiling, top 30 ceiling, potentially like Andre Karolinko.
Very true. And one thing we talked about him with the last pod is, 9 category wise, is this someone who can get very realistically can get very close to producing the triple one on a nightly basis in his stat set. The 1 3-pointer, 1 steal, 1 block per game, even in his rookie season. So that's going to be cool to see. And
Can
what
I
we talked about too is he's likely going to come off the bench at first, just because Williams and like someone like Torrey Craig too might fit better with the very offensive minded rest of the Bulls unit with White, Levine, and Vucevic.
Can I chime in on Matas real quick? Sorry, I didn't mean to
Of
interrupt you there,
course.
Andrew.
No, you're good.
I love the Andre Karolinko comparison. I think if Matas hits in the way that some people think he is, I mean, we've gotten all the way up to 3 now. We've I don't know if you guys are familiar. Sean Marion has had some top 5 overall finishes. Now, I don't think Matas is necessarily going to finish top 5 overall, but somebody with that skill set who can get the threes and get the stocks in high volumes the way that Marion could or Karolinko could have. Bozelis, the sky is the limit for him. I really think that's the type of stuff that Nine Cat caters to. Yeah, if he hits, then who knows what the ceiling is.
Yeah, even if it's not the best in real life, for us in nine
Exactly.
category fantasy leagues, it's very, very useful if he's able to produce this type of, defensive output with some 3-point shooting to go along with it too. All
Definitely.
right.
He's
So
gonna be sorry,
no,
he's
go
gonna
ahead.
be a cornerstone for my team next to Amen Thompson. And I'm looking to, dominate in the stock category within the next 2 to 3 years with those
Okay.
pairings.
All right. That was true. We didn't need to mention that was to your team. And yeah, that ended up being a great pick there for pick 8. So pick 9 and 10, we got 2 injured players here. So the first one at pick 9 was Nikola Topic. Next was Devin Carter at pick 10. Carlton Carrington, Bub Carrington went at pick 11 here. I think this is great value for Alba Berlin. Bub is somebody who could easily go in the top 10 of a lot of different dynasty rookie drafts now. Seeing him in person, he looks great. He's a lot bigger than I expect him to be. He's still a little raw, but if anything, is a lot further ahead in his development than I thought. And he's not even 19 years old yet. So very impressive stuff out of Bub Carrington, I think. In addition to the Wizards, Alba Berlin in this league got his point guard of the future. 12, the Beijing Ducks got Zachary Reese, should say. Our friends over at Point Made on New York Knicks, they at pick 13, they got Tijan Salons, who we have ranked as 10. So a little bit of value there. Braxton, our resident Hornets fan, tell us how excited you are about Salon.
I'm when the pick was made, I didn't know how to feel. I was hoping for not Dalton Connect, because not that Dalton Connect is gonna be bad, but he was kind of the odds-on favorite for the Hornets at 6, and he's just not the biggest ceiling guy in the draft. T. Salon is not really somebody I knew anything about before the draft, and now I'm completely enamored with him. It looks like, I don't want to speak too highly of him here, but it looks like they're going to try and do the Giannis trajectory. They're going to have him play some 5 this season. He's going to play some backup 4 minutes. From everything I read, it seems like the Hornets are preparing for him to contribute in year 1. So I think there's not in a major way or anything, but just to see some run. Whereas some people thought he'd be in the G League all season, I don't think that's very likely. So I think it's a massive, massive value here at 13 with the sky high upside that Salon has, and also the potential for for him to chip in on some nights, especially in a 30-team league. It's very important.
Yeah, it's exciting to see the potential that Salon has. I didn't like at first. I was very confused, even a little bit upset with the pick, because I wanted them to get like I knew I wanted them to get Klingon or somebody else. But in the draft like this one, where the some of the ceiling players, like there's a lack of players with high ceilings. I think swinging for the home run with Salon, at least in the position that the Hornets were in, is actually a pretty good move. So I'm excited to see if that pays off. So moving on in this draft here, pick 14, our Toronto Raptors team, they took Kel'el Ware. I think this was actually some good foresight for Toronto here, because initially I think we had Ware around like 17 or so, and then he ended up 12 for us. So even though maybe at the time he reached a little bit, at least in that perspective. Now it's looking like a little bit of value here for him landing where, and also centers are just, so hard to come by in these deep leagues too. 15, that was Deron Holmes. Pick 16, this was Mitch again, got Cody Williams. This is pretty spot on with his value. And then Brax, right after you got at pick 17, you got Yves Misi. One guy that we haven't talked about a lot yet is Cal Filipowski. He went at pick 18. So this is our friend Alba Berlin who made this pick, another pick for him in the top 20 here. So Filipowski, I got to see him in Summer League. So the game that I saw him in, he played a little bit, but played behind Darius Bazley for most of the game, which didn't make a ton of sense to me because I don't really think the Jazz or, many teams are planning to use Bazley at any point because obviously prioritize his development.
They actually cut Bazley after Summer
League. Exactly. Yeah. I don't understand because they have like 4 first-round picks playing on this team at the same time. And then during the game, I'm watching Kenny Lofton basically trying to fight Isaiah Collier for the ball. It was a little bit ridiculous. There was a couple of black holes on offense that were, really disturbing the flow of this Utah team. But at the end of Summer League, something that Mitch was talking to me a lot about, when guys like Bazley were sat towards the end, Filipowski was going off. And this is someone who looks like he's going to be very friendly to 9-category basketball. And the center position, there's a little bit of there's a few guys there, but not the deepest in regards to the front court for the Utah Jazz. So this is a even though the value is pretty lined up here with where Berlin took Filipowski, I still just wanted to mention him because we haven't talked about him that much so far in podcasts.
And I'd love to chime in real quick, Andrew. Even Misi and Filipowski are commonly drafted very close to each other just because they're kind of that last tier. Deron Holmes was in that tier. He's been knocked down a little bit now with the Achilles tear. But, I actually was at 18, just for a little bit of context, I was at 18, moved up one spot to take Misi with the thinking, moved up one spot to 17 to take Misi with the thinking that I preferred him to Filipowski just based on the draft capital. To me, draft capital is such a huge factor in rookie drafts, especially once you get down outside the lottery. In the lottery, take your guy, whatever, right? But once you get outside of it, I'm pretty easily taking a guy with the capital over somebody with that second round capital. Now, with that being said, Filipowski does potentially have a friendlier 9-cat game, like you mentioned. Just Filipowski, if they trade Markkanen, which is not seeming likely at this point, it seems like they're going to do give him a renegotiation and extension. Like they're going to bump him up like I think 40 million this year, and then extend him another 4 years after that. A la Miles Turner. I think Sabonis did something similar. If that happens, I do think he's kind of blocked. I know they like Taylor Hendricks a lot, and Walker Kessler does need to get traded for him to have a lot of value in the first couple of years. But if he finds an opening there, I think there's definitely a lot of room for Filipowski to be a solid contributor on a 9-cat team.
And I definitely don't blame you for the taking Misi first because there is less that he has to deal with. It's pretty much Daniel Tice and maybe now Carlo Matkovic, but not a ton of front court depth for New Orleans. Definitely less than in Utah for sure.
Yeah, and you'll see Connect down at 19. I do also want to preface, I do prefer Connect to Misi and Filipowski, but there was a big need at center there for me. So
yeah, absolutely. The center position running thin, especially in deeper dynasty leagues, is a very common thing to happen. So if you are in a startup draft for a dynasty league, it's best to get the center position locked down early just so you don't have to worry about it throughout the rest of the draft. So even if you have to reach a little bit, that's okay because at some point you will realize that you're going to need to fork over a good amount to have at least an everyday center if you plan to at least have somebody usable playing in that position, in that starting slot for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Pick 20, Jared McCain. Dylan Jones went at pick 21. The Lakers again got a little bit of value here, taking Tristan da Silva at 22. We have him 19 on our board. Next up, so I took Jalen Tyson at 23, who we now have 16 on our board. We already had him higher than 23 on our first board. I think we had him around 20, and then moved him up a little bit, as we watched how good he looked in the summer league, and just taking more note of like the lack of different types of moves the Cavs have made. They've not brought back Isaac Okoro yet, so there's not a ton of depth in the 1 through 3 position, which is pretty much all of which Jalen Tyson is capable of playing. So I talked about Jalen Tyson a lot on our previous podcast, but the person who gave my favorite comparison for him, Mitchell, called him Karis LeVert with a better looking jump shot. So did you want to chime in a little bit here on Jalen Tyson, Mitch?
Yeah, just like Karis LeVert can produce, a pretty solid nine category stat set despite his inefficiency from the shooting. So think of like 15, 5, and 5. If Jalen Tyson can hit that and he's a pick in your early to mid 20s, you got a home run steal in a salary league on a cheap contract for 4 years. So great pick, Andrew. I was a big fan of Jalen Tyson, and he was pretty much the best player in the Pac-12 before they disbanded. So he's going to be a great legacy guy for you, especially for us West Coasters. So I hope Jalen Tyson does great for you. He flashed a lot of potential. He almost got a triple double. If his teammates were a little bit better, he could have got that final assist. So um, hopefully Kenny Atkinson acknowledges his ready to go skill set, and he can be a plug and play guy and produce for you and your team who's looking to contend for that first inaugural Angle title.
That's true. That's true. And one thing we pointed out last podcast too is that the original coach of Karis LeVert was Kenny Atkinson, who is also now a teammate of Jalen Tyson. So this is a pretty good environment for him to be in to develop into that type of player that we think that he can be. Okay, so moving on to 24, Terrence Shannon Jr. went. It's pretty close to the volume that we have him at. Tyler Smith went at 25. Pick 26, our friend Mark from Sports Ethos took Isaiah Collier, who we have listed at 21. So I like that value-wise as a pick for Collier. It's pretty similar to like the type of good value the Utah Jazz got in real life, taking Collier at 29. And when I saw him in Summer League compared to when I saw him in USC, which I think Mitch was also in November when we saw him too. He actually did look a bit better and improved from what I saw at USC. And he definitely obviously had better teammates. Cal Pilipowski and Cody Williams is 1,000 times better than the teammates that Collier had on USC. So, definitely a lot more room for him to be able to shine, especially because he's more of a downhill player. So if he has spacing, especially like when he's on the floor with Filipowski and Williams, who are able to stand out on the perimeter, that's pretty helpful for him. And also he can run the pick and roll pretty well too. So there's some good passes and some good flashes for Collier. He did produce steals during Summer League too, which is good to see. And obviously that can inflate his value a little bit if he is able to, maybe produce some assists and steals on a nightly basis. Okay, 27 was Ryan Dunn. He's usually going around this range of late first round, early second round. Tyler Kolek was some good value for the South Bay Lakers. He took him at 28. We have Kolek at 24. I know Mitch is a big fan of Kolek. A lot of people are really a big fan of Kolek, and he just really seems like a Thibodeau type of player, one that he's going to like right away. And he did get a guaranteed contract, which is definitely worth noting. And it's very different if you see somebody get a two-way contract, something like that, where there's less incentive to play them. So even though he's drafted in the second round, he did get a guaranteed contract.
I do want to add to Tyler Kolek. I know people were saying Cam Payne was signed to be the backup for the New York Knicks. I don't think Cam Payne is very good, to be quite frankly. Tyler Kolek is going to be, hopefully by the end of the year, that backup point guard where McBride can play the backup too. Tyler Kolek flashed some really great playmaking chops in the Summer League with the 7 assists to 1.4 turnover to assist to turnover ratio. He really knows how to handle the ball. And, keep this into consideration. He was doing this with G Leaguers, two-way guys, the guys who are playing overseas, guys who aren't the best shooters compared to NBA talent. And he was finding a way for them to get easy looks. So think of this in, the real NBA perspective. Tyler Kolek is going to be a great ready to play guy. He's going to find these guys in the bench. He can run that pick and roll. He's probably the best passer in the draft. Maybe it's Nikola Topic. And Tyler Kolek also is a dog on defense, and he's a great shooter. So I think this is a great value pick for the South Bay Lakers who are looking to contend, given that he doesn't have his first round pick. So I hope Tyler Kolek pans out. I have him in a couple leagues. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, big fan of Tyler Kolek there.
Yeah, Kolek's going to be an exciting one. Okay, so at pick 29, rounding out the first round here, Jacoby Walter was taken. And pick 30, the Las Vegas Aces got, I think, some good value on Keyshawn George. So George is we have at 26 in our personal dynasty rankings, and I think he's, even though he is mainly a shooter, I think his stat set's a little bit more friendly than just one of those persons who's just a shooting specialist. It looks like he might be able to produce a little bit more rebounds, assists, and some defense than those traditional shooters who aren't really able to do anything else. So he's not going to have like a, a Bryn Forbes type stat set or something like that, where it's just points and threes and nothing else. I think he's a person capable of being a little bit more friendly to 9 category basketball than that. Getting into the second round, Nikola Duricic was taken at 31, so this is definitely like a home run swing attempt here. And I think if Duricic did not get hurt during Summer League, he probably would have ended up around this range for us, dynasty rank wise for the rookie draft here, because he really is a high upside player, and he did perform well in the combine. He was one of the biggest winners in general for his performance at the NBA Combine. So you might be able to get a little bit of a discount actually on Nikola Duricic if somebody, was expecting somebody to play right away, or kind of just gets tired of it, or maybe a couple months from now when the new draft effect wears off and they realize they got an injured player, you might be able to get a good deal on Duricic, who is a definitely a high ceiling player worth taking a swing on. Pacome Dadier went 32. Haley Larson went 33. One guy that Mitch and I like a lot, we both now have him in a dynasty league too. Oso Ighodaro went 34. We have him ranked 30 in our own personal dynasty ranks. So this is someone that we think that Phoenix might actually play a lot during this year. Both he and Ryan Dunn have a potential to get into their rotation, and I both think they offer kind of the same thing. But I think Oso is a bit more offensively competent and will be able to stay on the floor a bit more because he is good defensively too. He's not obviously as good on defense as Ryan Dunn is, but he's not, a complete negative on offense like Ryan Dunn is. So Oso is definitely someone who's got some potential to play a bit for Phoenix this year. 35, Ulrich Chomche. 36, Adem Bona was taken. I got to see him in Summer League. He's a lot bigger in person. And he was honestly, showing some really good bruising physicality out there. I think this is someone you could definitely see end up being like a rotation big man, like a staple in a rotation, and be able to carve out a long career despite being drafted in the second round. I really like what the 76ers did in this draft in general, the real life 76ers that is, taking Bona and Jared McCain.
He did also earn a guaranteed contract despite being a second round pick.
That's
So
right.
a lot to be excited for with Adem Bona and his stock potential.
Braxton, you were up next at 37. Got a good value grab here with Jonathan Mobo, somebody who a lot of analysts rank pretty highly just due to the 9 category stat set potential, specifically the ability to gobble up every rebound in sight. So tell us about your expectations for Mobo.
I really think he has an inside track to a rotation spot pretty early on in the season. It seems like the rotation minutes in Toronto are pretty wide open. More specifically on the guard side of things, but it feels pretty wide open in general. Mobo is really good friends with Scotty. Obviously, it's not like a huge factor in how much he plays, but some people say he is very similar, or he kind of not models his game, but just has very similar traits to Scotty, to where there's just some resemblance there in his game. And to me, that was really interesting. On top of the rebounding, and also, like I mentioned earlier, center is a big need. So Mobo was sitting at 37, was just too good to pass up.
Great value pick there. And then another value pick right after that, involving another Angle analyst, Mitchell. You got Johnny Furphy at 38, which is a 10-spot value grab here, according to our new rankings, where we have him at 28. So tell us about your expectations for Johnny Furphy.
I'm keeping when I drafted him, I was keeping my expectations low. He's, getting drafted to a very crowded Indiana Pacers, who just reached the Eastern Conference Finals. They just re-signed Obi Toppin, and they still have Ben Mathurin off the bench. So I'm not expecting a lot from Furphy for the first couple years, but he really surprised us in Summer League. He was a volume three-point shooter, something that we didn't see in Kansas. He exhibited a lot of stock potential, a lot of steals, and a decent amount of blocks for someone who's really bouncy at 6'8". despite being a wing player. So he's also one of the younger players in the draft. And I think I drafted him based off the potential payoff compared to the other guys that were still on the board. And I know there's a lot of Australians here in our Angle League, so maybe I could sell high at some point. Johnny Furphy is a name to keep into consideration in the trade market for me.
Very good. Strategizing for the future already. I love it. All right. So 39 was Harrison Ingram. Pick 40 was Baylor Shireman. AJ Johnson went at pick 41.
Andrew,
Cameron,
do you want to talk about AJ Johnson? Did you see him in summer league? Because I know he flashed a lot of potential that we didn't see in the NBL.
yeah, he obviously did so much more that we literally never saw him do in the NBL. I did get to watch him for a little bit. I also got to meet him. I did not get a picture with him, but I did get to meet him, and he was pretty cool. So AJ Johnson, yes, it was good to finally see him have some opportunity to play a lot. The one thing that's unfortunate is the Bucks had like the worst summer league output of just team, like for a team in general. There was multiple like 30-point losses that they suffered. So I'm obviously not going to pay much attention to that. But just more so pointing out that there wasn't really like a lot of good competitive players on that team. So it was actually good to see that they really focused all of their attention on AJ Johnson and Tyler Smith, just having them as the focal points of the team. But it was just unfortunate that they really didn't have great teammates around them. But it just should be noted that AJ was able to do pretty well despite being on pretty much the worst roster in summer league. So the potential is what the Bucks went for when they took him in the 20s. A lot of dynasty ranks did not have him that high, and even in dynasty drafts, he is still going around like the mid 30s range. This is definitely an interesting one. I know Braxton talks a lot about just like, wanting to look more into his real life draft stock, which is true. He was drafted in the 20s, so obviously he's getting a guaranteed deal out of that. And that's worth noting because that means there's some more incentive to play and develop that player. But the real issue is Doc Rivers. If any other coach was present, then we would obviously be a lot more high on AJ playing right away. But also at the same time, that's okay because not everybody plays right away year one. We can all look at Jalen Johnson as the shining example of that there is still potential to be very good, even though you're not playing a ton year one and you're, focusing on development instead. Pick 42 is Cameron Christie. Definitely keep just a close eye on that because the Clippers have a Paul George-sized hole in their rotation, so that's just something worth noting. Pick 43, Colossus Rhodes, our friend Colby got a great value grab with Bobby Klintman, who we actually have inside, are deemed as first-round value in regards to dynasty rookie drafts, late first round, that is, though we have him at 29. But Bobby Klintman was very, very impressive. In summer league, somebody that I actually was looking a little bit into last year as like, okay, if this guy gets drafted in the 50s, I'm going to try to squeeze my way into whatever dynasty draft that I can to grab him around that range just because I want to hold him onto my roster to develop. So he didn't end up declaring for the draft last year. He instead played professionally overseas before then redeclaring. He got picked with early second round and had a great standout summer league performance. Was definitely one of the best front court players that I saw in person while I was there. So Bobby Klintman is someone who's got a good 9-category stat set, so we're excited to see what can turn out for him. And then pick 44, our boy AJ Mitchell. That's a good value grab there for the Las Vegas Aces. If you haven't watched AJ Mitchell yet, this was definitely one of the standout players of Summer League and obviously a standout player during his time in the NCAA. No real major weaknesses to his game. And the main issue here is that he's on a crowded Thunder roster. So he's got a lot of names to deal with, in addition to also now having to deal with Nikola Topic next year. So that's the only kind of issue here is that he is facing a bit of a roadblock, and he also only got a 2-way contract. But that also means that he's probably going to be pretty cheap to acquire. So if you don't want to spend too much, you want to maybe send a second round pick, a future one, just to acquire AJ Mitchell. I really, really like a bet like that one. 45, Bronny James. Anybody want to talk about Bronny James?
I just think it's worth noting that this is probably on the later side of where he's going and sticking.
This is true. That's actually not bad value. Because we've seen him go near the 30s before, too. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Hmm.
which that's absolutely too high. I mean, obviously there's still some names I would rather have above Bronny on this list right here, at least on the screen. Jamal Shed was picked two below. In addition to KJ Simpson, I would rather bet on both of those guys than Bronny. But some other names right here I could see, taking the upside gamble on Bronny instead of them. Like for example, Juan Nunes. We now know that he's likely going to be signing back overseas. So at this point, I'll take Bronny with his guaranteed contract over that. And then guys like Isaiah Crawford, Quentin Post was drafted late. Isaiah Crawford's only in a two-way. Jalen Wells, I would also rather have over Bronny. He was drafted, before 40, and has a guaranteed contract. So it's he's definitely safer than some later second round guys just because of his contract situation, having that guaranteed contract instead of being on a two-way. So there's just more incentive to play him. I mean, they did note that they plan for him to be in the G League playing for the South Bay majority of this year. But I think we're going to see him more than some guys who are on actual two-way contracts and will be in the G League for a vast majority of the season. So 45 is pretty good for Bronny, at least, a lot better than what we have seen him go at. 46 was KJ Simpson. 47 was Jamal Shed. 48 was Juan Nunes, someone that, was drafted really high in real life, but ended up going overseas. And this is just something that, you have to deal with sometimes, specifically in the second round is where this happens majority of the time. Sometimes teams do this with the knowledge ahead of time that the guy's going to go overseas, which actually creates financial flexibility for the team. So sometimes teams pick guys like this on purpose, which is just worth noting. But Juan's really young and is playing on a team that's going to need a point guard once Chris Paul retires. So, he's someone that you can, if you want to, if you're tanking, you can stash him on your roster for a year or two and see what happens there. Isaiah Crawford went at 49. We were just talking about him a little bit before we started recording this podcast here. Just interesting, good tools, like physical tools, long length, and 6'7". So someone that you can keep an eye on. He's only on a two-way with the Kings, but Keon Ellis was originally on a two-way too, and look where he's at now. So that's someone that we can keep an eye on.
With Crawford, I think it's worth noting that his fall was because of his age and the two ACL tears. So
Okay.
if you like him, there's definitely not a bad flyer at the end of the draft.
Very true. Pick 50, Quentin Post, a very offensively skilled center, but he is one of the oldest rookies that was picked in this draft. But he did go to Mitch's team, the Golden State Warriors. Mitch, are you excited all about Post?
Yeah, he's okay. I mean, I'm more hyped on Trace Jackson Davis, but Quentin Post is hopefully gonna crack the rotation, but I'm not sure he really fits our need on the defensive end.
Got it. Next up is Jalen Wells at pick 51. This was actually me that made this one. Jalen is someone I view as more of a three-point specialist. Like how I talked about earlier with Keyshawn George. Yes, he's a three-point specialist, but I think he's going to have, a not really much of an empty stat set like some other three-point specialists have. But I think Jalen Wells is going to probably be one of those guys who, yes, can produce 3-pointers and score, and maybe be okay at rebounding, but I'm not going to expect a ton of assists. It doesn't really look like he produces much defense either for Jalen Wells, but he is on a guaranteed contract, so that's obviously worth noting. And then pick 52, this is the final one, Jalen Bridges, who's on a two-way contract with the Phoenix Suns. He did shoot 40% in college, which is worth noting, and it was pretty fairly decent at steals too. So he is on the older side, which is probably why he went undrafted. We currently do not have him ranked in our dynasty rankings, but I do like the physical tools that Jalen Bridges brings. So that's a at this late in the second round, it's fine to start trying to take flyers like this one. So that's going to do it for us today. And the full rookie draft that we just reviewed on the video here, you can also find that online as well. So for you audio listeners, you can head to anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com and you'll be able to see the full draft posted from our Angle Dynasty League on here for the rookie draft, that is. So if you want to take a look at that as a reference point, just as a average draft, or we'll just say the draft position of what our guys in our league did, a league that is filled with a lot of very good dynasty managers. Multiple people in there have won 30-team league titles before. You got to think about this, 30 managers putting in $50 each. These are some pretty big money prizes here. So These are some guys who really know what they're doing. So, a draft like this one is worth taking note of. And in addition to that, too, there's some helpful graphics on here to display their 9 category stat set. You can, of course, refer to our overall dynasty rankings, which are available on the same website. Will be the link right next to it. So check that all out on there. Everything that you need to know, our rankings, all of our content, what platforms we're on, what social media are on, are the link to our Discord server. All of that is located in one place, anglefantasybasketball.wordpress.com. So be sure to check that out. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, be sure to leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. Comment on this video. Let us know about how your rookie draft went. Who's one of your favorite picks that you've made in your dynasty drafts this year for your rookie drafts. And be sure to follow this channel if you are not already. Like this video, and we'll see you guys next time.